There is a blog. I will give the address to you, or you can get in touch with me by email, because it's really important that we all together agree on the content of the new initiative, because the initiative is successful if it's a community initiative. I think I can start talking even without the screen. I remember quite well my presentation, and I think for the first two slides I can just talk. And I would like to start by saying some words on the science initiatives of IHS, and in particular on PUB. And PUB is going to end in a few months, as you know. And there is no doubt that PUB was extremely successful. I'm not speaking on the results. I will leave to others the duty and the job to comment on the results. But I can say for sure that in terms of community building, PUB was extremely successful. And I think this success is witnessed by, for instance, the citation that were received by the literature. I'm talking about ISI citations to the first paper that was written in 2003 to start PUB. The paper already received more than 300 citations, and it is estimated that about 500 papers referred to PUB in these 10 years. So it's indeed a great success in terms of community building. The community felt unified under a common target. And this success calls for a prosecution of this leading role for IHS in the future. So the idea is that of introducing a new science initiative in the following decade to follow PUB. And in fact, in Melbourne, during the last IUGG General Assembly, a very effective debate was hosted among our community to discuss on the subject of the new decade, of the subject of the new science initiative. It was decided basically that it should last for a decade as PUB, and it was decided there, after collecting some ideas from the community, to create a task force with the mandate to discuss with the community possible ideas for the new decade. And the task force started working in December last year, and the preparatory activities have undergone through physical meetings, and also the discussion was started by opening a blog. Physical meetings took place in Vienna during the EG week, in Nanjing in China in May. It was a very interesting meeting. And we are also having this meeting, which is a part of the preparatory activities. And the next meeting will be in Delft, where on October 25, we will organize a visionary session on the new decade. And there is the blog. As I said, I will give the address to you. The blog hosted a web-based discussion, and 4 posts were written so far, and we got about 15,000 visits from December 2011 up to now. So the visits are indeed very many. Also, the blog was advertised in the hydrology community worldwide. And we got some 50 comments by 35 different persons. One may say that there are not many, but in my view, I was not expecting many more. I was expecting many visits on the blog, and they were indeed got. But, to write on a blog is always, some people are shy, it takes some time and some energy, so I was not expecting more comments. I think that 50 comments with the involvement of 35 young people, basically young people, it's already a good result. But there is still time to comment, and therefore I strongly invite you to write on the blog, because it's a way to keep the memory of your opinion and your voice. So, I can... I can continue, because I'm sorry for you that you don't see the slides, but I can continue because now I would like to introduce the summary of the ideas that we got so far. And basically, the main idea that came already in Melbourne is to focus on hydrological change and co-evolution of systems that are connected with hydrology, with co-evolution of hydrology with society, with geomorphology, with atmospheric sciences. focusing on change is, of course, something that is very popular now, and it's not easy to explain what the community feels about change, because PUB had the nice feature of being very clear. PUB had a very clear target, and still has a very clear target. Prediction in Ungauged basins, it's very clear. Okay. Yeah, I think it's more or less fine. So I'm skipping my introduction on PUB that I already gave on the task force, and this is the blog. Please look at the web address. It's also linked from the IHS website. If you go to the IHS website, then you see a link to the blog. And again, please take a note or visit the IHS website, because it's really important that you contribute. And the blog address is already in any slides that I'm projecting, so I can move forward. So as I said, the subject is change. And as I said, it's not easy to explain what the community feels about change, because PUB was very clear. To explain what are the research challenges connected with change is not so easy, because it's a very broad topic. And let me say, first of all, that the connection with society, so the change in hydrological system connected with the change in society, is the main subject. And let me introduce what we mean about change. And let me show you, I'm sorry for many of you that already saw this picture. This is an example of what we mean, and it's connected with what Dimitris talked about during the round table, Earth effect. This is a daily river flow series of the Po River. On the horizontal axis, you see the progress along the year, so the intra-annual progress, and on the other horizontal axis, you see the progress in the inter-annual direction. And on the vertical axis, you see the discharge, it's smoothed. And you see that there are patterns there. There is the seasonal pattern that we are already able to explain. But if you look in the interannual direction, there are patterns. You see mountains, which means clusters of floods and droughts that are largely unexplained. We are still not able to explain why sometimes drought occurs and lasts for many years, or floods tend to cluster in certain periods. So to investigate these long-term patterns is a part of investigating change. And let me also show you some example of change. This is urbanization that took place in Warsaw from 1995 to 2008. This is just an example. Other examples of change are given by the UNESCO Atlas of Environmental Changes. And here you can see an example of Africa's rapidly changing environment with disappearance of glaciers and change in vegetation, which involves also change in the morphology of the shoreline. And here you can see the dramatic change in Shanghai, the Bund, from 1990 to 2010. These are just examples of change in connection with society and relationship with hydrology. Now, what's new, first of all? Because one may say that studying change has always been done in hydrology. Hydrological systems are dynamical systems, so the study of change has always been part of hydrology. And one may say that also the connection with society is a part of integrated water resources management. So what's new, one may wonder. What's new is depicted in this picture. In classical hydrology, on the bottom of the picture, we studied the change in the short term, basically seasonality, but there is a steady state assumption underlying. You see that the the green line is horizontal. Then we started with scenario analysis to study the impact of change, but usually the prevailing form of research has been structured through an assumption that change is occurring in the form of a sequence of steady states with some jumps. But there is always underlying an assumption of steady state. In the future, what we have to do is to better comprehend the dynamic of long-term changes and to remove, possibly, the steady-state assumption. So, to be able to better understand long-term changes and possibly irreversible trends. So we have to gain a better insight in the dynamics of the system to be able to better explain inherent properties that lead to long-term changes. And of course this is not easy, and it's very challenging. And let me now introduce the targets that the task force, through the physical meetings and the blog, identified so far. They are very simple, basically. Just 3 targets: understanding, estimation and prediction, and transfer knowledge, science in practice. Understanding means to improve our interpretation of hydrological systems, and in particular their variability, the effect of uncertainty, indeterminacy, impact of change, and interaction with human activity. We have to better understand what is the reason why hydrological systems are changing in the long term. Estimation and prediction is, of course, the result, because if we gain a better understanding, then we can improve our predictions, and the final aim is to address societal needs, policy making, and implementation. And the interaction between these 3 targets is described in the picture that you see on the right-hand side, which was prepared by Sally Thompson. She is a member of the task force. 3 targets, and then we can formulate scientific questions. This is probably the most important part because it directly refers to our activity. Let me say that we identified so far 5 science questions, and the list can be integrated, can be enlarged based on your inputs. This is just a first suggestion. We have time until next year because the program is to start the new decade in Gothenburg in July 2013. And these are just some examples, how to understand the behavior of changing hydrological systems, because this is the relevant question. We all know that there is some variability that we still don't understand, especially in the long term. How to study this variability, how to model it, and then how to integrate advanced knowledge with indeterminacy modeling. Basically, we all recognize, not everybody, but we can agree that there is some inherent uncertainty, inherent randomness in our systems, and the question is, how can we jointly model the deterministic part and the random part to improve the prediction? How can we produce sound and transparent scientific modeling tools, open source? This is a science question that I really like. I think that the future, especially referring to change, is in cooperative research. We need to compare research results. We need to move from the local scale, case study-based analysis, to a more spatially distributed scale, to a more spatially distributed analysis, to a spatially distributed analysis. And of course, this requires cooperation and exchange of data and softwares. So the open source idea is very relevant, and also the idea of virtual hydrological laboratories is very relevant. We have to try to work together better than we did in the past. Classical hydrology has been essentially an individual activity. Now we have to really work as a community, more than in the past. How can we make use of new observation and information technology in a new generation of models? We have measurement techniques now that are really exciting, and we have to devise ideas to take profit from these measurements. How to model hydrology at the interfaces. If we want to study the connections between and coevolution of hydrological systems and related systems, we need to model the interfaces, which is a really challenging question. We all know that, for instance, on the interaction between surface water and groundwater, there is today a lot of research activity that is being carried out. Some example of enabling research: hydrology and interfaces, as I said, coevolution. Coevolution means the study of hydrological systems together with, for instance, the catchment, the morphology of the catchment, the geometry of the river network, which is evolving together with hydrological processes. And we also have to devise new theoretical frameworks for uncertainty assessment. We need to take profit, as I said, from newly available data. We have to bridge better than in the past experimental and theoretical hydrology. I already spoke about virtual hydrological labs, and there is a couple of concepts which I think they are very relevant that I would like to introduce to give an idea of what studying change could mean. Our models are typically based on the conservation of energy and mass, which cannot explain change. If you think about the conservation of energy and conservation of mass, you cannot explain change. These laws allows the process to go in one direction and also in the opposite direction. Therefore, indeed, a paradigm shift is necessary, and we could refer, to do that, to the second law of thermodynamics, which explains that the entropy of the system, of an isolated system, tend to reach a maximum. And this is, sorry, there is a mistake here, not to not increase, but to not decrease. And therefore, this tendency of the entropy to increase can explain change, can be an idea to explain change. Indeed, there are some ways forward that can be open. So, basically, I want to be very brief. Please keep a note on the blog address, which, as I said, is linked from the ICSH website, because, as I said, your opinion is really important. If you feel shy to write on the blog, you can write an email to me, and if you give me permission, I publish. It could be also an anonymous comment if you want to remain anonymous, or, and I'm willing to do so, if you ask me to post an anonymous comment, I can do that, or I can publish on behalf of you. Let me conclude by referring to some, by reporting some quotes. And the first is referred to Heraclitus. Nothing is permanent except change. I felt this is really significant for our ideas. Heraclitus also said that, as many of you know, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, not the same man. This means that everything is changing, and I think this is relevant. And also I found a citation to Confucius, who said they must often change who would be constant in happiness or wisdom. And let me close by reporting another citation to Heraclitus, who said, Pantarei, everything flows. And I think this could be, I thank Dimitris for the idea, this could be a good short name for the new decade, but we have to discuss about this. That's it. And again, please, your comment on the blog or to me would be really appreciated.
Thank you, Alberto. I think we have time for comments also, or any question or Dimitris.
Well, I have not assimilated everything. It's difficult. It's very difficult to think about a 10 years program. But just a couple of feelings. I'm very glad that change is getting the focus of the new decade. And I'm glad that it is not, well, in the last years we have became familiar that change is equivalent to climate change. This is something different and broader. And change, as Heraclitus put it, is more related to hydrology, because as we said, Alberto, climate change. And change is something that should not necessarily make us be afraid of. It's something that always happens, nothing, not necessarily catastrophic. And I hope we could transmit such a message from the hydrological community, that change happens whether we want it or not, and change is something that we have to deal with, and we also change. That's initial comment.
Okay, just a quick reply. Yes. I think it is important to say that we focus on change in general and not just on climate change, because in the current mainstream is focusing on climate change and treats hydrology like a corollary, like just an appendix, while the interaction with the society is through hydrology. The society suffers from climate change through the floods, the drought, the water shortage. So the role of hydrology is really fundamental. And also, the society may profit from climate change, as you rightly said, through hydrology. So it's the role of hydrology that is important, that can exacerbate, can make stronger or less effective the effect of climate change. So hydrology is a filter of climate change, and the role of this filter is to be understood. Currently, what we did basically was take an hydrological model, calibrate the model with respect to historical data, and then change some parameters, some inputs, some land use, and project for the future. This relies on the assumption that the model remains the same, the model structure is the same. This model structure is highly uncertain, so the results that we got, although very interesting, should be improved. And we should ask ourselves, if something is changing, how the model is changing. This is a difficult question. I don't have now, and I shouldn't now give a suggestion how to do that. But what I'm really sure of, there is the room for understanding this. We have a lot of data, a lot of information that is largely unexplored. For instance, usually we focus on case studies. It's just a point information. We should look broader. By looking broader, which is not easy, we can gain some more information.
Okay, other comments? Alberto.
I have a couple of comments. Maybe you can switch to one of your last slides regarding key issues or questions. I don't remember. Yeah. Okay. So I fully agree. I mean, I like the topic very much, and maybe I would change. For example, the first question is rather than how to understand the behavior of a changing hydrological system, I would drop the term changing here. Because it's not just a joke, because I think that, dealing with change is very important, but sometimes there are, we don't know quite well how many systems works even without changing. We have several examples, like straightforward derivation from the role affecting parameters. Essentially, hydrology deals with very complex systems, and we don't know yet many of such features. So I think that the first really important question is to understand or model or have some perception of the physical behavior of complex systems. And for the same reason, I would merge the first question with the last one, because essentially hydrological systems means have to deal with interfaces all the time. It's not just, we typically tend to split, within surface hydrology, groundwater. It's just water is the same essentially, and we have interface all over. And also complex systems. Complex systems, hydrological systems are complex by definition. So I think that the first scientific question is really very much important, because before dealing with changes in the relation with society, we need to have a better understanding or modeling or whatever, however you want to call it, complex hydrological systems. This is I think we're still in a way lagging behind, and we need to understand more about how complex hydrological systems work. That's my opinion.
One small comment is, when we speak about hydrological system, immediately we speak about changing hydrological systems, because all hydrological systems are changing all the time.
Please,
I didn't like this, but to be honest, I'm afraid that the climate change community will overrun us with this initiative. You need some barrier against this, because there's so much funding money inside of this, and they give some funding also to hydrologists to make impact assessments. And there is a number of studies, if you would have a look for Google Scholar, you could see it quite easily, about climate change. It's much higher than about all other changes.
Well then, we must make the case that there are other changes, and something that I've been trying to push is other major changes within society and within the global economy. For example, it can be argued that population change, movement of people to cities, in population decrease in some countries, Eastern Europe for example, huge increases in others, have huge relevance for what we're talking about. And we have to set our scene in a much broader context. For example, a couple of years ago there was a financial, economic crisis, and which we're still going through. These are, among others, hugely important changes for the overall context in which we must set our work. In response to your comments are very useful. So please put them on paper or put them in the blog. And
I'm one of the shy persons who was mentioned.
Now's your chance. And the chance essentially closes in a month or two's time.
More comments?
I would ask, have you got some replies from geographers? Because I think geographers are the champions of this change. But they are used to see the change and to follow the systems and the change in the system. So I think connections should be found with this community. Thank you.
There was one more comment.
Yeah. I will many people stress the changing and uncertainty, but the fact is also that society reacts to change with some feedback systems, right? Even so, we don't know what's going to happen. When it happens, we'll have a reaction, and so there's some feedback system of water use that some way counteract some way the uncertainty and the change. Shouldn't we consider this in our analysis to extend, let's say, downstream to the, not just hydrological science, but also water management in the sense of a feedback system to better predict what's going to happen as regards the water use and the water effect of the change. So basically, including in the system also the feedback reaction of society to change somewhere. So enlarging the system downwards.
Yeah, I think it's better if I reply, otherwise I forget. First of all, let me, Aldo, thank you very much. I join Gordon in saying that I take a note, but if you write on the blog, it would be really useful. And I want to confirm that I believe that the new decade should be rooted in classical hydrology. So understanding hydrological systems, I fully agree. The reason for putting the word changing was just we wanted to emphasize that we are looking on that. But we didn't want to downgrade the classical hydrology and better understanding. This is, of course, but your observation is really useful, especially to merge the two questions. And also, I would like to tell you, I consider you as a representative of the groundwater community, so your opinion is really very much important in the blog. We didn't get many replies from people working on groundwater. It would be really great if you could tell your colleagues to express their opinion, because I think groundwater here is playing a very relevant role if we want to look at the interaction with society. Now, Andreas, yeah, you're right. We are conscious of this risk. I think we should just play our role in a scientific way. I'm confident that if we do deep and thoughtful research, we can prove in the long term that hydrology matters. And yeah, I know that now we undertake the risk that people may say that we want to imitate and to go on the horse of the climate change and to take some funding. But this is not our intention. Our intention is just to provide a better insight on the issue, and I think there is much room for providing better informed scientific response. So I think we have to try and to believe in it. We have a role to play here. Now, geographer, yes, we are in touch with, a huge part of our community is made by geographers, and we are in touch with people like, I put some name, Thorsten Fagener is in the task force, and Kit Bevan also wrote comments on the blog. So we are in touch with them. And I know that the dialogue is sometimes not easy, but it's a dialogue that is part of our community, and we are in touch. And for the connection with society, fully agreed. And I should have better explained, probably it was not clear. The interaction with society, two ways, interaction, not one way, is one of the subject. Not only society, also co-evolving systems in general, because what may look as an unexplainable change, if you just look at river flows, then if you look at the river network, at land use change, so the evolution of the catchment can be explained. So the aim is also to study the interconnections between hydrology and sister systems, including, of course, society. So you're perfectly right. We have to broaden our control volume by including some more, which is not easy, because if you include connections, you increase uncertainty, possibly. It's not always true that if you increase the size of the system and you include more information, you reduce uncertainty. You could amplify the uncertainty. So this is a delicate issue, but of course it should be explored. I hope I didn't miss any comment. And there is one more, please.
Well, I agree basically with all your scientific questions. I will, connecting with the word feedback, I will try to add more examples of interfaces, especially if there are feedbacks with hydrological cycle, for example, vegetation. If we just put as an example of interface the relationship between surface and groundwater, we are again thinking only in water in a classical way, introducing other type of interfaces as water use demand or vegetation, maybe atmosphere, will improve the last question. Okay.
Yeah, let me say one thing that I didn't mention, which is important. In the visionary session that we will organize in depth, there are some presentation by invited speakers, and also there is some room for pop-up presentation by the audience and the discussion. Pop-up means that it will be given the opportunity to people to speak for 3 minutes with 3 slides. We have to be quite strict because, of course, we don't have much time. But it will be a very important opportunity for you, if you are there, or your colleague, to just raise your opinion and make a presentation so that we can really record what has been proposed. And this is an important opportunity. If you would like to take advantage from this opportunity, please send to me an email in advance so I can keep track of how many people would like to speak. But they can be requested also on the site, the pop-up presentations.
Okay, Alberto, I think that if there are other comments, we told the event is okay.
It sounds for me very strange when you thought that the society would suffer from climate change. So you just anticipate it. So it is in a scientific program which just as an assumption you take that all changes are bad. So that the God created perfect world, and what is bad is due to climate change or due to evil. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just a quick reply. And probably, I'm sorry, probably it was not clear. I think I also said that the climate change or the change can be beneficial to society, and I'm convinced of that. And we should be very honest in. Yeah.
I agree that the feedback is very important and should be included. And the feedback is done through engineering measures and water management. So I think this should be made explicit that hydrology includes also these areas.
Okay, I think that we give time enough. I just would like to add, I agree with also the comment of Aldo, because when a slide of this is written by a young scientist, it's important to emphasize that many hydrological phenomena are not well understood. So it could be because from the first question seems that they are well understood that we are looking to the change. So it's probably in a change project we can also emphasize the importance to improve the knowledge of physical processes. Okay, so the next step will be in depth. So I expect all these comments will be on the blog, and then we will see in depth what's happened. So in any case, it will be because they are the video. So in any case, it's also for shine. It was better to write. Anyway, so we can go ahead with the merger sessions. So session 4 and session 5. So we will have 5 talks. The first one is in French talk, or just the title? Just the title. So I'm not speaking French and either read. So the next speaker will be Bargawi or... Oh, very good. Cecile?